Welcome back to the channel. On to my next project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build 2 Adirondack chairs. I have already purchased the lumber. I'm going to use pressure treated. This has been drying out for approximately 4 weeks. It makes it a little bit easier to work with and a little less bad for your equipment. And of course, I'm not going to plane this or anything like that. I'm not going to run it through the planer or the jointer or anything like that. I'm just going to use the table saw and the miter saw, and then after that I'll have to clean the blades because all of that pressure treated chemical gets on your blades and it kind of gunks it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm using 4/4 decking, so it's thicker than a regular 2x6 would be. But the decking has a rounded curve on it, and I don't really want that. I want a nice flat edge on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rip off the very little bit of the edge here on the table saw. I got the table saw all set up to do that. So I've got my template lined up on the board, and I'm going to trace out each one to get it ready for the to cut on the bandsaw. Okay, so you can see by the template the bottom piece of these back slats are skinnier than the top. So you need to use what's called a taper jig. And you can set the taper jig up simply just using your template, because you know that's the right size. Make sure you get it lined up correctly everywhere. I normally tighten down one side. There you go, everything's flush, just like that. And I'm going to I need 2 of these pieces. That's the center slat for each chair, so I tighten it down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through the table saw, and it makes it the exact size. And then after that, what I'll do is you flip the board over, and it'll make exact duplicate but facing the other way. Works out real well, and you got to make sure your table saw is high enough your blade is high enough to go through the size of the wood plus the taper jig. Okay, there it is. There's all the parts, all cut. Next thing we do, go to the bandsaw and cut out all the shapes. Okay, so today I cut all my shapes with the bandsaw. You don't need a bandsaw to do it if you have a router table with a pattern bit or even a jigsaw. It works great. You don't need the bandsaw. I just was blessed one day by this one. I got it really cheap. It's a 1967 Rockwell Delta saw that a guy had. It was his father's. It was in his garage. He sold it to me, and I ended up rebuilding the whole thing. That's one of my other videos. Came out great. You can see it works like a dream. Really safe saw. I love it. But you don't need one in order to cut these shapes. You can use the router table or the jigsaw. All right, so the next step is I'm going to sand the edges of everything that I cut on the bandsaw. I'm going to use this this rigid sander. For the outside edges, I'll be using this belt, and for the inside, I'll put the spindle on. Works out really well. So now that I've marked all these with the center punch, I'm going to go ahead and drill the countersunk holes. Okay, the next step, I'm going to start the assembly of the chair. What I'm going to put it together with is wood screws. Of course, they're outdoor wood screws. And I'm going to use Titebond 3, which is waterproof exterior wood glue. The first step of these, of starting to assemble, is the most important, that you get it square. Because once you put the first rungs on, that's going to square up your whole chair. So it's important that you get that right, and the rest is easy after that. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make sure the overhang is a half an inch overhang, and I'm going to mark this if I can. Sometimes it's easier just to mark it with the drill bit. You could probably hold it together without glue, but I just like to make sure that I get the best, tightest fit, so it's going to last a very long time, because these are going to be outside in the weather. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it there, make sure everything is marked correctly, and I will screw this in. Okay, so the next part I'm going to do is put the legs together. The inner leg, this is what the chair is going to rest on eventually. So what I do is I line it up the way I want it, and then I'm going to drill my pilot holes. Okay, so what you can see here is that I've set the legs on the actual portion of the chair, and I've clamped them where I want them to go. Now it's important that I'm on top of the flat top bench, and I want to make sure everything squares up. And if you have the angles cut correctly on the interior leg, everything should line up perfectly and it won't wobble at all. And what I want to do now is go ahead and drill a couple of pilot holes so that I can again screw them in, and then I will go ahead and glue them, take them off and glue them back in once they're lined up. So just get a couple pilot holes going here. Okay, so now I'm just gluing on these back supports. Everything pre-drilled just like everything else. Put in the correct spot. Alright, and the next piece is going to go right here that we can put the back slats on. And what I usually do is I'll pre-drill it and I will squeeze it in with a clamp. All right, so there it is so far. All the back slats are put on. The next I'll put on the rest of these, but that's going to be for another day. Starting to look like a chair. All right, so the next step is I'm going to put on the slats for the seat. And I'm going to space them out evenly. I'm going to put a couple of spaces in all the way along here. I'm going to use glue and screw on those as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is between each one, I've got it spaced out 3/8 of an inch, just like the spacing on the back slats. We're going to do the same with the seat slats. So basically you're going to put your spacer in like that, put your next seat slat in, and then what I use is a combination square to space them perfectly like this so that they're all even. And I'll clamp one side down, and then I'll pre-drill the other side, put both the screws in, and then take it back off like everything else and glue it as I go along. All right, so I've screwed and glued the one armrest on. I put in all the seat slats, and all evenly spaced. And what I'm going to do is I took the measurements with my combination squares from the other one so we can make them exactly the same. I'm going to set this up on there. I'm going to set this in place at the same spot. Just push that in. Make sure I got about as much there. I'm going to slide the chair to the edge, or as close as I can get it. And I'm just going to clamp it in place, not hard, just enough to keep it from moving as I pre-drill. And I drill the first one in the back support. I'm looking good there. And then I'm going to eye it up here, right about in that center mark. Make sure it's lined up with my support. Go right in. And that's it. That's how you build an Adirondack chair. Pretty easy project. Good one you can do at home. I'm going to go ahead and make another one. Make sure you like, subscribe, and God bless.